Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new around here, my name's Kit, and this is my world. Thank you very much for joining me. In this episode, I'm going to be doing another tag, and this is the Can You Adapt It book tag by Paul Reeds. I'll leave a link in the description. So, without further ado, let's get cracking. Question number 1. What is your favourite book adaptation? Well, there are lots. I don't really do favourites because my brain can contain a lot of stuff and it's impossible to sift through it and put it in any sort of order. So, off the top of my head, I'm going to say Shawshank, the Shawshank Redemption, adapted from the Stephen King novel. I absolutely love that movie, and it's kind of generally considered one of the best movies ever made. Stand By Me, also adapted from the Stephen King novella called The Body. It's a Rob Reiner film, so you know it's going to be good. It's got a fantastic cast. It's beautifully shot. It's just a beautiful, lovely, wonderful, heartwarming film, and very nostalgic. It stirs up a lot of stuff for me. Outlander, of course, that's adapted from the Diana Gabaldon novel. I've only read the first book, but I've watched all the series. It's a TV adaptation and is much better for being that because you can cram most of the content of the books into the episodes, and it's bloody marvellous. I love it. Jaws, of course, from the Peter Benchley novel. Jaws is a fabulous film, one of the greatest films ever made, in my opinion. Steven Spielberg, of course, directed that. And I've got a pile of DVDs which I just plucked randomly from my shelves, all of which are adapted from books, and I'm going to wave them at you because I like waving things. So I'm going to say The Hunt for Red October, The Mosquito Coast. I have two versions to wave at you. The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, adapted, of course, from the C.S. Lewis classic. But this is the animated cartoon version. The Mirror Cracked, Evil Under the Sun, from the same collection. Death on the Nile. Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan. Anyway, moving swiftly on. Question number 2. What is your least favourite adaptation? Again, it could be a very, very long list, but I haven't got anything to wave at you. I'm going to say the Hobbit trilogy by Peter Jackson. I know it's probably an obvious choice. I avoided using Lord of the Rings for most favouriteist because it would have been too obvious. But I've got to say the Hobbit trilogy because I felt so incredibly disappointed and let down by everything about those movies. They shouldn't have been made, and probably the less said about them, the better. The original trilogy, brilliant. The Hobbit trilogy, stinking. Question number 3. If you could adapt any book, which one would it be and why? Well, here is an interesting thing because for many years I've been really keen to see the Catherine Kerr books, the Devery series, adapted for the screen. At first I thought big, lavish, epic movies was the only way to go. And then when I started to see television way surpassing the artistry and epicness of anything in the cinema, because the cinema now is just entirely superheroes, but I started to think the Devery books were made for a big budget, epic television series adaptation. It would have been so exciting to see that done in the same vein as Game of Thrones and Outlander and things like that, which have worked very well. But now I don't want it to be adapted because I don't trust anyone to do it. And I've realised that I don't like my favourite things being adapted. I take it very personally and I very rarely approve. At least I never have 100% approval. So I would like them to leave the Kerr books alone, but I would like them to get a lot more attention. I'd like more people to read them because I think Catherine Kerr and her Devery series are right up there at the top of the fantasy spectrum. I think they're just magnificent and very overlooked. But I don't think anyone would be able to do them justice adapting them for the screen. Question number 4. What's one adaptation that was portrayed perfectly? Well, I've already mentioned it. It's Outlander, the books by Diana Gabaldon and the TV series by Stars. It's magnificent. It's perfect. I love it. I haven't read all of the books. I read the first book and pretty much decided that the TV series was better. It was adapted and written, not in its entirety, but a certain amount of it by Diana Gabaldon herself. She was heavily involved in the whole process. She made a cameo in the first season. I think it was the first season. And she even did a passable Scottish accent for an American. And I just think it's brilliant TV. I just absolutely love Outlander. I made a video about it. In fact, it was the first thing I ever filmed. I did three episodes, which I filmed all in one go, and Outlander was one of those three. It's a terrible video. Please don't watch it. It's embarrassing. I'm awful in it. I had no clue how to do this stuff in those days. But Outlander is right up there among my favourite things to watch, period. Question number 5. If you could star in any book adaptation, which one would it be and which character would you like to play? Spider-Man, obviously. Question number 6. When it comes to adapting a novel, what's your preferred media? TV miniseries or a film? Well, in the old days, I used to think that cinema ruled. I was raised in cinema. I always loved movies. I was a proper film buff, and I thought television was kind of the poor relation, the ginger cousin who stank vaguely of urine. But now it's all turned around, you see. I think that TV is where all the good stuff is happening, and the good quality actors have all moved over to TV and realised that that's where they can do good work. And cinema is all comic book superheroes and not a lot else. It's kind of depressing. Great filmmakers like Peter Weir have abandoned cinema entirely because it's too depressing and they don't get to make good movies, because unless it's got a superhero in it, no one's interested. It's all about money. But in TV, there is the opportunity for people to still create something magnificent. So that's my preferred media now. Question number 7. If you could change anything from a recent adaptation, what would it be? Well, despite having just waxed lyrical about the Outlander adaptation, which I think is very near perfect, and for the first few seasons was 100% perfect, in my opinion, I think the later couple of seasons have been a little bit slipping in terms of quality. I still love it. I still think it's better than a lot of stuff out there, but I felt that the quality has slipped a little bit in certainly in the latest season, or possibly the season before that. Anyway, there is one scene in the latest season of Outlander. I can't remember which season it is now. Is it 5 or 6? Put it up there. Anyway, there's one scene which is kind of delirious dream sequence kind of thing. It doesn't really happen. It's all taking place in someone's head, and for reasons that are probably book related, I haven't read that book, they took all the actors that you're used to seeing in period attire, in period settings, from the olden days part of the story, and transplanted them into the modern day, into modern clothes, modern for the story, which is 60s or 70s era. So all of these glorious 18th century characters who were favourites and who had been fully realised in the 18th century part of the series, in their 18th century clothes and their 18th century settings, are suddenly transplanted into the 20th century, and I didn't like it. I felt it broke the fourth wall a little bit, but even if it didn't break the fourth wall, it certainly broke my immersion. Suddenly I was seeing actors in 1960s or 70s costumes with false eyelashes and makeup, and they were actors. It was no longer the characters. It ruined the immersion for me. In fact, the more I think about it, the worse it actually was. I kind of tried to ignore it at the time and just stay in the moment while I was watching. But yeah, I really didn't want to see the actors looking modern because it ruined the whole thing for me. Even though I know that that's something that I think was described in the book. That's one of the rare situations where something from a book actually doesn't translate at all to the screen because of reasons of immersion breaking. I didn't like that. Question number 8. Is there a book adaptation better than the actual book? If so, which one? Well, there are countless, and again, I could reel off a whole list of titles, but I'm not going to. I'm going to just say one, and it's a film that I have already mentioned. It's Jaws, and the reason I've chosen Jaws rather than any of the others that sprang into my mind when I first saw this question is because it's one of the rare ones where I have actually read the novel and hated it. It was a book that I really ought to have DNF'd. I would have liked to have DNF'd it. Unusually for me, I actually finished the book even though I was hating it. And the reason I finished it was just because I wanted to see if it could get any worse. And it did. It just got worse and worse. It was a terrible book. I loathed it. I was reading it and I couldn't imagine how anyone reading that book could then make such a marvellous film out of it. It was just dreadful. Everything about it I hated. But the film, one of the greatest films ever made. So that's a good example of that. And on that note, I think I'll call it a day. Thank you very, very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did and you haven't already, you know what to do. Please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, share, comment, do all the good stuff, and I will see you next time. See you later.